Hey there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. Well, it's been probably like a week and a half since I've done one of these. Um, Probably going to get back on cadence in a minute, but sorry for the minor disruption to the extent that you noticed it. I am kind of busy with a lot of things and sort of trying, as always, to sort of fit things in. I really miss moments in my life where I would be busy, but I would have a lot more just unstructured time, you know? And now it seems like I pretty much don't have any of that. It's kind of frustrating, actually. I mean, I've packed my days in such a way that I do have a little bit at night. It's kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna go skateboarding, and then I'm gonna go, like watch an episode of Doctor Who or something. But for the most part, even on the weekends, I'm not really just like on my own, kind of chilling out, which it's something that I realize I really need, and feel kind of a bit of an absence there. So my mom is back in LA, and got a message today, actually like a half hour ago, kind of scary. She went to the doctor, I think just the GP, like a standard appointment. And now she's in the ER and she's going to stay at the hospital overnight for observation for possible AFib, which is quite concerning, I would have to say. Atrial fibrillation uh, could be a sign of other things going on. Obviously, it has risks associated with it, which are very concerning as well. And just generally, I worry a lot about my mom, obviously, and doesn't make me feel super chill. I When I was a kid, she fell down not even that many stairs, just like 3 stairs. Happened to have the house sprayed for bugs. She was carrying a basket. Fell down literally just like 3 stairs and broke her back in a couple places, um, and was out of commission for like 6 months, much of that not even able to walk. And to this day, this is obviously decades ago, to this day still has chronic back pain from it. And since I was probably always, you're always worried about your parents, but kind of trained me to be, and my sister as well, to be like habitually maybe a little extra cautious and concerned. And this is not like, it's probably nothing, but it's enough to make me like a little concerned. I am going in a couple of days to LA, just by chance anyway, to see her, to see my sister, hang out, see Hamilton for the second time, which is interesting because my perspective on Hamilton has changed since the last time I saw it. Um, I'm still very much going to enjoy it, but the first time I saw it, I didn't think quite how much, I didn't think that much about how it really puts the sort of founders in very sort of rosy light. And it's it's taking people who are honestly a little bit problematic and yeah, framing them in a much nicer way. It does mention slavery a little bit, but kind of like skirts around it. And I mean, that's not the only thing that's problematic about the founders, to be fair. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, we are ostensibly a constitutional republic or democratic republic. Realistically, saw something shared on Twitter today. Sorry, I can never escape that. But somebody said we're a constitutional oligarchy, and at the time that we were founded, only like a quarter of the population was able to vote. Seems pretty compelling, actually, as an oligarchy. That has expanded, obviously. We're 100 years out plus for women and 150 years for black men, but not not that recent, not that long ago, rather. That 150 years okay, it's more than a lifetime, or kind of like at the outer range of human longevity, but not that long. In 100 years, certainly there are people alive who were alive prior to women's suffrage, which is just crazy. And yeah, it's like also like the civil rights movement. Not that long ago, you know, you look at the age of like Ruby Rose, Ruby Rose, Ruby Ridges. God, I I have name problem just in general, and then when you have two names that are kind of similar, a little bit of alliteration or something, it just like fucks me up. She's not that old. She's not young, but she's not that old. She's alive. MLK would not be that old if he was still around. And you look at this and you're like, shit, it's crazy. It's fucking crazy. Anyway, don't want to blather on about that. Probably won't be too distracted about my mom, although who knows, if I get a message for any reason during this, I might cut it short. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. What I wanted to talk about today is, but anyway, I will be at least seeing her in a couple days, so that's something. And I did just see it this year, which is also something. What I wanted to talk about today is a little weird in the sense that the word has not much to do, obviously, at least with the things that I'm kind of prompted it, but to me it's kind of a direct connection. So a little bit of background before I get to the word. I've gotten into, I'm in like probably a dozen groups on Twitter. Sorry, they're Twitter. Can't do it. Can't not do it. But I'm in like these group threads, group chats, and people talk about different stuff. They throw up tweets, people respond to it. It's just kind of a weird thing. I don't know why people do it, but it's a thing that people do. And most of the ones that I'm in, I agree with the stuff that they're doing, but I just kind of can't follow along that much. But this one, I'm pretty outspoken about being for vaccination. In fact, yesterday I got boosted, so I'm pretty feel decent about that. Anyway, got boosted, speaking for vaccination, and I'm in these groups. I'm in this one group now, which is kind of like talking about anti-vaxxers and trying to, throw a little flame on the people who are really opposed to vaccination. I'm always kind of hesitant on this because, I don't know, it's stupid, but there are people, a shocking number of people who I follow, who follow me, down by about 60 of this since I got involved in this group, but still quite a few people who are anti-vaxxers, or at least anti-vax adjacent. The most annoying ones, honestly, and I think RFK Jr. really got into this kind of like thing, but there was a time when people wouldn't necessarily like proudly say they're anti-vax, but they would at least kind of cop to it. Now the whole thing is, oh, I'm not anti-vax, but, you're not or I'm not a racist, but, if you're putting the but at the end, you're probably racist, you're probably anti-vax. But they won't fucking admit to being anti-vax, but they basically say a whole shit ton of things that imply that they're anti-vax. They're opposed to these mRNA vaccines, the COVID vaccines, and they're anti-vaxxers. But they can't even give you the fucking satisfaction of accepting the term. It's like TERFs. There's a massive problem with TERFs, and although I think that's actually almost too generous of a term because, they're not trans exclusionary or exclusionary radical feminists, because radical feminists implies that they're radical feminists, which seems a little bit more generous than I would say is fair. But yeah, ton of these turf people, they won't call themselves turfs. They won't accept the term. I understand it's not like the nicest term. Calling somebody anti-vaxxer is not the nicest thing, but they're fucking anti-vaxxers. And it's annoying because this is, I don't know, I feel like this is an extension of kind of Trumpism and just general bad faith argumentation online and in real life. The whole thing where people, and when you look at some of the strategies these people use, if you can even call them that, to make their arguments, again, if you can even call them that, they're talking about things like, oh, mRNA vaccines are not even a vaccine, which is the dumbest fucking shit. When I was in virology, the first time, dating myself here a little bit, but I took virology in the 90s. And they didn't have mRNA vaccines back then, but they were talking about them. They were like, this would be the coolest fucking shit ever, because right now, if you want to have a vaccine, you have to either have dead pathogen or live attenuated pathogen. And, imagine if you could just, and there it's just like this gamish of like, who knows what. And imagine if you could just take the specific proteins which you can raise antibodies to, or even the specific parts of those proteins, raise antibodies to those antigens, and then you don't have to deal with all the other bullshit. And especially imagine like the dream of mRNA was, and still is, it's a realized dream really, that you have the sequence, like basically the program to describe for the exact part that can generate a actual effective antibody response, and you don't have all the other bullshit with it. And not only that, you get the shot, as I did yesterday, and your body expresses, you take that mRNA, make some protein out of it, the mRNA gets degraded, the protein is there, plus the adjuvants and stuff, and then your immune system just kind of responds to it, all that stuff gets degraded away, and now you're immunized without ever having been exposed to the pathogen. Dead pathogen is probably okay, generally speaking. There have been examples of where it wasn't killed properly, and then people got like polio from what was supposed to be a killed vaccine. There have also been many cases of polio actually used the same one. There's a live attenuated, there's the Salk and the Sabin vaccine for polio. I always get the two confused, which is which, but one is killed vaccine and one is live attenuated. And the live attenuated one is not that far away from the wild type. So there are cases where people will get the live attenuated one, and then they'll be actually properly immunized, properly vaccinated, but a mutation will happen. They'll expose somebody else to a reversion of not necessarily wild type, but basically something that's a much more virulent strain. And that's how you get a tiny outbreak of polio. It's one of the leading things anymore, because the vaccinations have been so good that basically polio just does not exist as a thing anymore, other than this kind of example. That's like the limit of it. There are still places where it's kind of smoldering a little bit, but it's pretty much close to eradication. And if you can just use mRNA, then you're just taking exactly what you need, and it's kind of fucking awesome. It's a really good way to do it. So anyway, I've been talking about this stuff. Somebody sees me doing this and interacts with, it's one of these things. Sometimes you see people that you're following and that follow you. You're talking about the same things. You kind of like pile on something. They see this, they invite me into the group, get in, and then as part of this group have been like interacting more with anti-vaxxers, which I think is good. I feel a little weird about it because it's been a thing that's just bothered me. Like, I wish the fucking anti-vaxxers were just like right-wing nut jobs, because there are a ton of like soccer moms and yoga moms who are kind of lefties, but kind of lefties, more like liberally, but they're anti-vaxxers. And there is a shocking, scary chunk of the left who are anti-vaxxers. And it's just fucking maddening. So they have these things that they'll say, like, oh, it's not a vaccine. Again, dumb, not true. Trying to think of some of the other ones that they have. It's just like a litany of just the dumbest fucking arguments. Like there are things you could potentially raise. I wouldn't say they're reasonable or valid, but there are at least things you could say that are not so absurd. But the stuff that they're saying is just like la la land out there. And gotten into it with a couple people, and one of the people that I got into it with is a guy who his Twitter handle was Unholy Rome. And this is a guy who I've thought, well, this is a little bit weird. I've followed him for a while. I could swear he was following me. And after we got into it, I noticed he was definitely not following me and I was not following him, which to me sent the signal that he soft blocked me. You block, unblock, and then you're no longer following that person. But maybe could I have misremembered that? It's possible. I don't know. But anyway, he posts a video a few days ago and he's like, oh guys, I'm really sick. I've got COVID. And he's like, I'm sitting there like, I'm watching this and I'm just like, motherfucker. And he's explaining how he's got a heart condition and he's not getting vaccinated, which is frankly fucking dumb as fuck, because there's a very small risk with, I think, like 3 of the vaccines of basically acute myocarditis. And acute meaning like, it's like transient, you'll recover pretty quickly, and not really that big of a deal for most people. But it was enough that, it's kind of concerning. It's in the known side effects. The frequency of this is like order of 1 in a million. Depends on which vaccine. It's like a little bit more for some, a little bit less for others, but still. And you look at this and it's just like almost, I'm not saying it's a negligible risk. It's obviously a risk that you have to factor in, but it's pretty fucking negligible. And then you look at the risk associated with getting COVID, which is massively more, and especially if you have a heart condition like this guy does, it's not good. And also, like, I have fucking asthma. I can breathe now, but I'll tell you, when the asthma is getting to me and I have trouble breathing, it's one of the worst feelings I have experienced in my life. Just sitting there in that experience where you're like desperately gasping for air and you can't quite get enough. It's not pleasant. Don't recommend it. Not really a good thing. And you have people who are not getting vaccinated and getting sick, and then on top of this, continuing to do stuff with other people, exposing other people, getting other people sick. And it's just fucking like, dude. And the funny thing here is, I saw this video and I tweeted something at him like, dude, I love you. I hope you're okay. But I really wish you would reconsider this vaccination thing and get vaccinated when you recover. Something like that. Kind of move on. And then, I don't know, a few hours later, whatever, he has another video up explaining how he's got, like more detail on the congenital heart thing, or whatever the heart thing was. I don't even remember anymore. Don't really even care that much, because it's like, it's like my friend whose wife wife is pregnant. OB-GYN tells her not to get vaccinated, which is just, now it's even more absurd. At the time, it was already pretty absurd. And she and he and a bunch of their friends get COVID because they're all hanging out, playing hockey with people who don't give a fuck. Some dude gets sick, knows he's sick, doesn't know that he has COVID, to be fair, because he's, but knows he's sick, goes to hockey anyway, in a fucking pandemic, sick, gets everyone else sick. I gotta tell you, and I'm sure they're back to hanging out with this dude, but for me, if somebody did this shit to me, I that would end the friendship. honestly. But anyway, dude and his pregnant wife both get COVID, and SpO2 is down to a scary level, and all of this kind of stuff. And you're like, I feel bad for you, but also you motherfuckers didn't get vaccinated. Like you have this magical thing that you can do that, and then this is one of the things that the anti-vaxxers get into. They're like, oh, it doesn't actually protect you. Yeah, it protects you. Not only does it prevent infections, which is a pretty good thing by itself, but even if you get infected, the illness that you get is typically much, much less severe. And when you recover, this is important as well, when you recover, you stop shedding virus sooner if you're vaccinated versus people who are infected and aren't immunized. They'll recover, and then for like a month later, they're sitting there shedding virus and exposing people, getting other people sick. And it's like, it's just the arguments that these people make who are just overtly anti-vax, despite being like, oh, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. It's just fucking insane. It's fucking insane. So this dude anyway makes the other video, posts the video, and then posts a tweet like @Sminner, like @me. And then we get into a bunch of back and forth. And then, I don't know, 10 tweets down, a bunch of people are like, why are you picking on him? Why are you don't need to bother. It's like, motherfuckers, the guy brought me into the damn conversation. It's like, hello. So anyway, this dude blocks me and a shit ton of other people because he's like a podcaster and he's kind of, relatively well-known guy. I think YouTube, I don't know, one of these platforms, whatever the fuck it is, maybe multiple ones. But he's on this. A bunch of his followers block me, and I assume that from behind the block, they're kind of shitting on me and all this kind of stuff. Who knows? But I do know that before that, I had like 50, 60 followers that I no longer have, which is, it's not like a big deal, but it's like dumb, I guess, is the best I can come up with. I don't even want to, it's just like so goddamn dumb. So fucking dumb. This is a thing, the fact that this is a thing that we have to deal with today is just bizarre. You have these magical things, and obviously they're not magical, they're science and engineering, but they're technological wonders that basically, if everyone took them, would slam the brakes on this fucking shit. Could basically eliminate this. And instead, it's just gonna be endemic, and more people are dying now than were dying like a year ago, and now nobody will wear a fucking mask, and it's just like the whole situation around this pandemic, it's just baffling to me. It makes me feel insane because you see people saying these things, and first off, again, I understand. Okay, in undergrad, I took a couple classes of biology, Bio 181, 182, genetics, molecular biology. I took virology. I took immunology. Just undergrad. Probably a half dozen more classes. In each of these courses, we did transcription and translation, genetic expression, this kind of stuff. I'm very comfortable with mRNA on a theoretical level, just from that. Graduate school, more virology, more infectious disease stuff, more immunology, and you just keep piling it on. I've had a lot of this stuff. And then you have these assholes who are out there who, and I'm not saying there's anything like magical about these subjects that you can't learn them on your own, but a lot of these people know enough to be able to say a couple of words and sort of, to somebody who doesn't know, sound like they know what they're talking about. But they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, very clearly. They say absurd shit that just has no basis in reality. And you'll get, they'll send you 20 tweets, and you're like, or blather on about something or whatever, and then you try to respond to even a fraction of that, and you can't, because it's just, I can't remember the guy's name, Bertolini's bullshit asymmetry law, the amount of energy that it takes to refute bullshit is like an order of magnitude more than the amount of energy it takes to create it, which is awesome. It's a great fucking thing. And so, yeah. And also, it's not just that it's that much more energy. Like, even if you have the energy to do it, you have somebody tweets 15 things at you, and then you try to respond to each one of those on a point-by-point basis, and you look like you're just blathering on, and it makes you look like you're on the defensive. And then that person just keeps shooting more bullshit at the wall, and it just is this exponential thing. It's like it's not feasible to even have any kind of an argument with these people. And also, I mean, honestly, it's like climate change deniers or anti-evolution people. Like, there's not two sides to this argument. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of patronizing you a little bit by even pretending that you have a reasonable argument that's worth debating, and it's not a fucking debate. I'm a fucking expert at this stuff, and you are not. And it's one of the things, like, I talk a lot about this, but the Dunning-Kruger sort of thing, this whole thing where people, I don't know, they watch shit on YouTube, or they circle jerk on these, I don't know, articles of the VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Effect database. People see that, and they don't know, okay, this is recording every possible thing that happens after vaccination, not because they're all related, but basically so that someone can come out later and do some actual statistical analysis and see, like, oh, is it really a correlation or a causal effect, or is it just a coincidence? Most of the shit in there, coincidental. But people read this stuff and they don't know the first thing about epidemiology. They don't know anything about statistics. They don't know anything about fucking anything. And they see this and they're like, oh, well, there's an entry in this database for this. That must mean that this is a causally, X followed Y, ad hoc ergo propter hoc, or whatever the fuck. And it's just like, I don't know, it just makes me feel insane. It makes me feel like I'm losing my fucking mind. Because, I mean, it's like, I went to school for all this time, and you fucking people don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. You're blathering on about a bunch of bullshit that's just wrong on so many levels that you can't even begin to talk about why it's so wrong. And then they're also, and this is the frustrating thing, because everybody's wrong about some things, right? Everybody makes mistakes. But these are not people who are interested in learning. They're just basically invested in their explanation of things, their version of reality. And so if you try to explain things to them, you're just being condescending, or you're making some kind of you're making an appeal to authority, or the one that is driving me fucking insane also now. And this is like with this huge constellation of just utter bad faith. The bad faith, Dunning-Kruger effect, all this kind of stuff just blobbed together in this giant fucking thing. People are making these things where they'll be in there and then they'll start throwing around like logical and rhetorical fallacies, incorrectly, mind you. They'll be like, oh, you're making an ad hominem attack. Nobody made an ad hominem attack. Nobody fucking did. No one came close to an ad hominem attack. Nobody made something that was even in the vicinity of maybe being potentially close to the realm of possibly considering making an ad hominem attack, and yet you're making this claim. And then they're making like all of these other, oh, you're doing a straw man, oh, you're doing it. It's like, motherfucker, you don't even know what the fuck words mean. How is somebody supposed to have even a discussion with you? And you throw this shit out, and it's like, well, do you try to debunk it? Do you try to explain it? Do you try to have an argument with these people? Do you try to, what do? Do you just let it lie, and then people see that and they think that it's real? I don't even know. I don't fucking know what the hell to do there. It's disheartening, frankly, because you feel like at a certain point they have so much energy in their wrongness and behind their wrongness. And again, like, and then this gets to the fiefdom thing. This Rome dude has a fiefdom. You know, he's got followers, he's got people who watch his shit, he's got fans. Not a huge group, but, you know, enough that it's a decent. And weirdly enough, this gets back to, like, and again, I'm not trying to say, like, capitalism is the root of all ills, but the pursuit of profit at any cost leads people to very bad conclusions and leads to bad outcomes. Like, for example, here, there are a bunch of people who are spreading this anti-vax bullshit, and I strongly suspect that their main motivation is just that it gets them views, it gets them clicks, and views and clicks translates to fucking Patreon subscriptions and ad revenue and all these other things. And so, you know, they don't give a shit. They're kind of like, to be generous to them, amoral. And they see, oh, if I press this button, then I get money. And they just keep pressing the fucking button because they want the reward of the money. And yeah, I mean, it's like, at a certain point, it doesn't even matter if they believe the shit that they're saying. And I do wonder often, like, are you this fucking stupid and ignorant, or do you know better? And if you know better, that is definitely worse. If you're this fucking stupid and ignorant, by itself wouldn't be so bad, but you're willfully so. And again, this is the thing. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has bad understanding of certain things. But the unwillingness to learn or assimilate new information or, you know, anything like this, it's just like fucking maddening. It's maddening. And anything, you know, if you criticize the shit that they say, it's not just that you're saying that something that they said is wrong. You are making like a personal attack against them. This is how it goes down in their minds and in their little cohort. And so, you know, it ends up just being like this pile-on of bullshit. And at a certain point, you're just like, I don't even know what the fuck to do with you people. You know, and to some extent, I mean, maybe you just let people be. But the problem is, these are people who are going to vote. Like, the same with the fucking Trump supporters. And the same with, you know, like, I mean, these motherfuckers. So I live in Gilbert. And I go on the street here, drive around, and there are fuckers in these giant ass trucks that, yeah, it just like, I don't know. Again, like, we're in a fucking pandemic. People won't wear a mask. They won't get vaccinated. We're in an ongoing climate change catastrophe. Now, granted, we're at the beginning of it, and, you know, it's kind of deniable enough, but a lot of shit's already happening there. It's gonna get worse. And you have people in these motherfucking big ass trucks that get fuck all fuel economy. They've modified them so that their emissions controls are not very good. And the trucks themselves are just dangerous because they're ridiculously huge. They're massive. If you're a pedestrian versus that thing, you know, compared with a normal car, you're done, right? There's been a massive uptick in pedestrian fatalities and injuries, and largely this has been attributed to these cars getting bigger and bigger and more massive. And, you know, it's just like, it's bizarre. And also, like, there was a thing, I remember like a decade, 2 decades ago, yeah, you'd sometimes see like a tiny woman and she'd get into a big truck and it looked funny, right? Now the trucks are so goddamn big that you'll see a big fucking hunky dude, like 6'2", like kind of giant dude, and he's getting into the truck and he looks like the little women. It's like, do you realize how ridiculous you fucking people look? I don't understand. And I mean, never mind also, like, they fuck with the emissions controls, they fuck with the, you know, they put on the giant coffee can muffler. You know, cars farting around, putting out unburnt gas and noxes and SOXes and all this shit. And you're just like, why? Why, motherfucker, are you doing this to everybody else? It's annoying. It's just, and so again, like, yeah, I can ignore it. I can ignore the Trump people. I can ignore all these other things that are, you know, you could ignore the anti-vaxxers, but the problem is, the anti-vaxxers are a massive chunk of the population and growing. And they're not just satisfied with being anti-COVID vaccines, they're anti-vaccines in general. They're not anti-vaxxers, but magically every vaccine has problems, and magically they're opposed to them. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, I just want to slow down, I'm just more skeptical about it. It's like, the fuck you are. Like hell you are. So they're bringing back diseases which have been all but eradicated. There are things that just should not exist anymore, or should be exceedingly rare. They're coming back for no fucking reason. COVID is very popular now. So we're hearing more and more of it. It's just like, it does not need to be this way. It's so fucking dumb. And again, the vaccines, largely prevent you from getting it. If you do get it, largely prevent it from being bad. And, if you look at the growth rate or the R number for these things, it slows things down significantly. Keeps you from shedding as much, it keeps you from having as long of a course, it keeps you from getting as sick, and it keeps you from getting sick. Basically, all of these things mean less impact on other people, which means also, the thing sort of slows down. Get enough people vaccinated, and the thing just kind of tapers itself out. Or we just, pretend it's not a thing. Every place you fucking go in Gilbert, like if I wear a mask, I look like a moron. I look like a moron. I look like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I look like a crazy person. Because everybody else is just sitting there in a pandemic, unmasked. Like it's like there's nothing to, I don't know. Again, just feel fucking insane. So I worry about these sort of fiefdoms, to get back to the term, because it's kind of like a reality fork, just like the Trump fake news shit, but it's on vaccines, and then you get other fiefdoms where they're doing the same kind of shit on other things, and then you start getting the splintering of realities into a million different little groups. None of the groups may be necessarily that huge, although some of them, like the anti-vaxxers and the I'm not an anti-vaxxer but groups, are pretty fucking big. But altogether, it breaks democracy fundamentally. Like the whole, and don't get me wrong, democracy has a lot of problems anyway, and democracy as implemented in this country has a lot of fucking problems. But when you have a population that have total disconnect with reality, you just can't have an effective functioning democracy. It doesn't work. It's like journalistic malpractice, because if you don't have a functioning fourth estate, people are not informed, people are not, they have a disconnect with both what's going on and what can be done about it and what the consequences of things are, and that means they're going to make bad decisions. Even if they're, very wise, intelligent people, they're not informed and they don't have an accurate understanding of what reality is, they can't make good decisions. If they do, it's going to be by coincidence or by accident. So anyway, with that, on that cheerful note, I'm going to get back to work. My computer in the next room is like driving me insane. Apple has finally released the MacBook, released, I guess announced more than released, but in the near future, they're coming out with the M1 Pro and M1 Max, Apple Silicon-based MacBook Pros. The chip looks really fucking cool, but the most important thing about it is that thing that you can't hear but is driving me insane, that fucking fan noise, hopefully will go away. I'm paranoid. I got this one after the butterfly keyboard, which was a fucking fiasco catastrophe. And did not expect this one to be as bad as it is, but the fan and the heat are terrible. I'm hoping this one will not have a new problem, but we'll see. I'm totally expecting the new ones to, but we'll see. Anyway, with that, thank you very much, as always, for listening or watching, and honestly, just fuck the anti-vaxxers, fuck the Trumpers. Yeah, and also fuck the people who are not taking this shit seriously, because in both of these cases, yeah, I mean, it's one of the things, like, I'm losing my mind also with Congress. Just, okay, now we're our few trillion over 10 years. Sounds like a lot of money, and then you divide it by 10 years, and you're like, it's not actually that much money. But that thing is now like 1 point something trillion over 10 years. So into the hundreds of millions of dollars per year. And it's just, shaving all this shit off. And also, I mean, we have, I could just rattle off a half dozen things that need to be done that we could easily do. Student loan forgiveness. That would massively impact me personally, but also a ton of other people. $1.8 trillion in debt. That apparently actually costs more money to service than it brings in, even though those debts have interest associated with them, which is interesting. Yeah, never mind how the fuck that works. And school, I mean, it's so shitty. Like, Biden made these watered down, limp, lukewarm promises about, like, oh, we're gonna make not all university, but community college will be free to everybody. And now that's gone. We're gonna do like a tiny bit of loan forgiveness now. Fuck that. Not gonna do that. We're gonna have a public option, which honestly, the public option, when the ACA came out, I was kind of for it. In retrospect, and especially now, I feel like the public option would end up just becoming a high-risk pool that people who lose their insurance would get dumped into. It would end up being like massively expensive, massive subsidy to the insurance companies, and it would just, like, the costs would explode and it would become untenable to continue, and then it would just blow up and go away. Versus actual, universal healthcare. The drug, just negotiating drug prices for Medicare, that's gone. Like, all of these things are gone. Doing really anything material about climate change, Biden was going to do like a half watered down version of something, and that's gone. It's like nothing, basically. And then the big one, and this is the one that makes me fucking insane, is voting rights. Because, well, I guess you could say also, like, expanding the court or doing something about the fucking court. And in that constellation also, like, give DC statehood, do something where the Senate, the way it is structurally, is set up so that, essentially we have permanent minority rule. In order to get just a majority of the Senate, we need a supermajority of voters electing senators. That's kind of fucked up. Whereas Republicans can get, a minority of voters and still have control of the Senate. This is great. But, not fixing the Supreme Court, not doing anything about that at all. We're not doing anything about increasing the number of senators. We're not doing anything to protect voting rights. And then, it's like 2022 is a blink away. Fucking tomorrow. And very easily, the thin majority in the Senate and the thinner than previously majority in the House could boil away. In 2020, barely, Biden won, and that's against Trump. Like the worst fucking demon spawn president. Well, I guess I've heard compelling arguments that he's not the worst president, but like one of the most overtly terrible people who I'm familiar with at the present time. Let's say that. Running against him, Biden just barely eked it out. Now you have no Trump to run against, and we could very easily lose the House and Senate, or either one, but potentially both. We have Breyer, who's not resigning. He doesn't want to politicize the Supreme Court. Like, the fact that this guy's judgment is as fucked up and stupid as it is, I mean, and RBG gets a lot of credit for being, I think much better than, and don't get me wrong, by the standards of the Supreme Court, probably okay, pretty good. But, I mean, these are people who just are disconnected with reality. They get
this lifetime appointment, and then they just, they're there for decades and they just get detached. Like, even if they already knew something going in, which is probably optimistic, they're just like spun out into la la land. Like, I don't want to politicize the Supreme Court. Where the fuck do you think you live, man? I mean, I don't know how. I mean, when Bork was nominated, it was already political, and now it's not even. It's just a joke. The fucking Federalist Society is basically growing judges in the lab, and getting them installed in there. It's how do you think that it's not political now? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And this guy is like, well, no, I'm just gonna hang out. I don't want to die on the bench too. That's another. That's like, I mean, it's like threatening God. Yeah, I'm a super non-religious person, but it's like basically the guy is sitting there like daring God to strike him down. Not a religious person, but I mean, like, come the fuck on, man. How stupid are you? Like, resign. It's gonna be anyway. Like, we lose the Senate instantly. Mitch is like, well, we have a presidential election here in a couple years. We're not gonna confirm anyone. Yeah. And now you have 7-2. Not that 6-3 isn't enough, but 7-2 is like, come the fuck on. We're not expanding the court. We're not doing any kind of reforms there. We're certainly not protecting voting rights. And, literally, I think 49 of the 50 states at least had bills in place, and many have passed them into legislation to do voter suppression or to do things like, if we don't want to certify the election now, we don't have to. It's kind of up to us if we're in power. We don't need to worry about who actually won the election. Like, come on, who cares? So like, you're in that situation, and people are like, oh, well, we will just out-organize them. You're going to out-organize people who have gerrymandering, and they have, like, voter suppression built in, and they have all this stuff working for them. And you're not doing a goddamn thing about it. And you're like, it's so fucking dumb. It's so fucking dumb. Anyway, with that, now for real, going back to work, going to touch my computer, burn my hand on the fucking thing. The fact that it is in the next room, and the next room has a closed door. Now, granted, it's not the most insulated door I can see under the wall, or under the door. So, it's not like an airtight room. But I can hear the fucking fan in there. And normally, I'm sitting right next to that thing. It drives me insane. Like, I'm losing my mind. I feel, you notice it's in here? I don't know, probably not. Anyway, with that, for real, thank you very much. I will be back probably next week. Take care. Say Jay.